In this video, we will take a look at a few key concepts in the literature review process: scholarly literature, peer-reviewed journal article, empirical study, quantitative study, qualitative study, mixed method study, and opposing views in research. Let's begin with what a literature review is and why it is important. A literature review is a systematic examination of previous research on a topic. When planning a study, researchers typically review the scholarly literature to see what is already known about a topic. Conducting a literature review helps a researcher to establish a foundation for their study. It can also provide inspiration for the design of a new study. For example, new studies may attempt to replicate, that is, repeat, a previous study to see if the results hold up. Or they may extend previous studies by looking at new groups of participants and settings. Alternatively, and perhaps most popular, are studies that explore research questions that have not been answered by previous studies. A literature review can help to identify those unanswered questions. A literature review can also highlight opposing viewpoints in the research and attempt to synthesize these views in a new way. Sources for a literature review are generally drawn from the scholarly literature. What is the scholarly literature? This is a term that encompasses various sources of information about a topic that have been written by experts for research purposes. The scholarly literature consists of academic books and journal articles that are written by researchers for an academic or research audience. Note that research may also be reported in many other sources of information: blogs, newspapers, magazines, research reports, web articles, and so forth. These sources may be included in a literature review. However, we usually limit the term scholarly literature to academic books and journal articles. Within the scholarly literature, one type of source is a peer-reviewed journal article. Peer review is the process through which the scholarly community evaluates research and decides which research is most valuable and important. The peer review process also provides researchers with feedback on their manuscript so that the final article presents the research as clearly and effectively as possible. Scholarly journals that include a peer review process are considered more reputable than those that do not include a peer review process. The assumption is that the peer review process will weed out poorly designed studies and research that may be misleading or invalid. How can you determine whether a journal is peer-reviewed? There are several strategies. Most databases of source material, such as ERIC, Academic Search Complete, and PsycInfo, have an option that you can check to limit your search to only peer-reviewed sources. Sometimes this option is listed as scholarly journals, so look for both terms on the search page. However, if you find a source elsewhere on the internet and want to check to see whether it is peer-reviewed or not, you can go to the journal's website and explore the About or Journal Description area. Most journals that are peer-reviewed will state this prominently on their websites. For example, the American Psychologist's website description states that it is a peer-reviewed scholarly journal on its homepage. Similarly, the Journal of Education's About page states that it is a refereed publication. Note that the term refereed is synonymous with peer-reviewed. However, sometimes you have to delve a bit into the journal's manuscript submission guidelines to find out about the peer review process. For example, the journal Counselor Education and Supervision's Submission of Manuscript section indicates that all submissions are blind peer-reviewed. Note that in this context, blind means that the reviewers do not know who wrote the manuscript, and the author of the manuscript does not know who the reviewers are. This aspect is intended to increase the objectivity of the peer review process. Are books peer-reviewed? Sometimes they are, and sometimes they are not. It depends on the publisher's process, and this information can be harder to obtain. Although books, whether peer-reviewed or not, are a valuable source of information, we are going to focus on journal articles in this class. Note that other disciplines and courses may allow books and book chapters as sources in a literature review. Among peer-reviewed journal articles, many articles describe empirical studies. According to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, the word empirical means capable of being verified or disproved by observation or experiment. The key words here are observation or experiment. Empirical studies are those that involve systematic data collection that is conducted by the authors of the journal article. A key to identifying an article as describing an empirical study is to look for a description of the method of the study and a summary of the results. The method typically has sections such as participants, measures or instruments, procedures, and so forth. The results or findings section presents the author's detailed analysis of the data they collected. In contrast, some journal articles are theoretical. They present the author's ideas about a topic based on a review of the literature, but no original data collection and analysis. Other journal articles include editorials, book reviews, and commentaries on other topics that may be of interest to an academic audience. However, these are not considered empirical. Here is an example of an empirical studies method section. Note that the research purpose and questions are clearly stated, which is usually, but not always, the case with empirical studies. The method specifies the setting, sample, participant characteristics, and data collection instrument. Within the category of empirical studies are three general types of study methodologies, that is, the type of approach the researchers use to gather data and explore the research questions. Quantitative studies use measures or instruments that generate numeric data, scores on tests, responses on questionnaires, numbers of observed behaviors, and so forth. You can generally tell if a study is quantitative by looking at the results section. If there are statistics, then the study includes a quantitative component. Here is an example of a quantitative studies results section. Note the prominence of numeric data and the presence of statistics in the table. Qualitative studies use research methodology that generates text-based or visual data, interview responses, observation-based descriptions, photos, sketches, artifacts such as student work samples, etc. Here is an example of a qualitative studies results section. When looking at the results section of a qualitative study, you will typically see a narrative with lots of words and very few, if any, numbers, such as the image on the left. Qualitative results will often include quotations from participants that illustrate key themes or trends, such as those presented in the table on the right. Mixed method studies combine aspects of both of these methodologies, thereby producing both quantitative and qualitative data. Authors will generally describe their study as a mixed method study if that is the design they have used. However, if they do not, a key would be to once again look at the results section. A mixed method study will include both numeric results and textual or visual results. Here is an example of a mixed method studies results section. As you can see, numeric results are presented on the left, and textual results, in this case a list of quotations, are presented on the right. The final concept in this video is the idea of opposing viewpoints in research. A major goal of research is to answer important questions in our quest to learn new things. Researchers must guard against confirmation bias, which is the tendency to seek out and remember information that is consistent with our pre-existing views, rather than being open to new viewpoints and evidence that contradicts our views. As part of this process, researchers strive to understand both sides of an issue, both the side they personally agree with and the opposing viewpoint. If there is previous research evidence to support each view, then new studies can help understand and clarify the contradictions. To that end, a literature review should include any research that presents evidence supporting the opposing view, with an explanation of how this contrasting information may fit into the overall understanding of the topic. If the contrasting views will be explored in the current study, this can be stated as well. To recap, a literature review involves examining the scholarly literature on a topic to provide the foundation for a new study. Scholarly literature consists of books and journal articles that are written by researchers for an academic and/or research audience. Peer-reviewed journal articles are a subset of the scholarly literature and have usually been carefully vetted by the research community. Empirical studies are those that present the results of the author's original data collection. And the three types of empirical studies include quantitative, qualitative, and mixed methods. Each of these is distinguished by the methodology and type of data that are involved. Within a literature review, it is important to emphasize empirical studies, as these are the primary sources of evidence on a topic. In addition, researchers include studies that present opposing viewpoints, if these are available, to ensure that the review is comprehensive and balanced, meaning that the research on both sides of an issue is examined.